Welcome back. I know it's been a while since you've heard from me, James Boyd, and my editor, Jim Ayello, but we are now in a new location with the James Boyd podcast. I promise I am not that arrogant. I'm not that conceited. It was actually Jim's suggestion. I just named the podcast the Independent Podcast after myself to make it easy to find for everyone who follows along with Colts news, with my
Branding,
sports
baby.
news, branding. So we are back. I'm excited to be back. Jim, it's been a long time coming. Obviously, a lot of logistical stuff for those out there who are wondering, where's the podcast? Why didn't you bring it to us sooner? A lot of things went into it. I mean, I had to find a platform to host it. One of my childhood buddies actually made the art and the cover art for the podcast, and then just getting it up and running. And what better time, Jim, to announce a podcast or to come back and make the first full episode of a podcast than on a week when the Colts make another QB change, which means that really this isn't even our first episode. This is our second episode. It's just the first one that you all will hear.
Yeah, I was gonna say you said it's been a long time since you talked to the fans, but you and I talked yesterday for a good. It was a great 45-minute podcast. Like we were teasing it, we were excited, and we did a great job recording it. We were ready to go, and then uh, everything we talked about went out the window. So it's perfectly Colts. It's perfectly this podcast. And yeah, like James said, cut him some slack because the Athletic moved away a little bit from the local beat podcast and I had put a little bit more focus on the national podcast, which we have, which are spectacular. Athletic football show, Scoop City. They're great. But they were like, James, if you want to keep doing it, which you should, go do your thing. And so James, also while doing his day job and also helping cover the Fever and the Pacers and all the other stuff you guys see him do, also launched a podcast. So we are here and we are excited to talk about the Colts, who give us things to talk about every week. Yeah, man. I mean, I guess my first question for you on this is what was your reaction? So like give me the sense in the moment of like Shane comes out and Shane, we all know Shane at this point. Shane Steichen comes out and you're expecting to hear pretty much nothing because he's Shane Steichen. He doesn't like to give away almost anything in press conferences. And he starts talking and I think we spoke yesterday, and you were like, I didn't think he was building toward Anthony's back. I thought he was building towards something else. So yeah, kind of take me through what happened here.
Yeah, so I don't even think I told you this, but I want to give some context. This is why I love having the podcast. So I sit next to Jake Arthur in the Colts' media room, and he does stuff for Colts SI and Locked On Colts. Great friend,
Yeah, big
great work
fan.
that he
Good dude.
does. And I walk into the room, and there's a ton of cameras in the back. And as we get closer to Shane speaking, there's a ton of people who walk out and stand along the wall. And I'm like, and I kid you not, Jim, I look at Jake and I'm like, man, this feels kind of weird. I'm like, they never had this many people in here unless there is some big announcement. And I looked at Jake and I'm like, there's no way they change quarterbacks again. And he goes, nah, I don't think so. There's probably some other announcement. And then Shane walks in and he starts and I was debating. I'm like, should I even record what he says? Like, is it going to be a typical mundane press
Yeah.
conference, whatever? And I like started hit record and he starts going like, hey, this last few weeks, let's talk about the process, whatever with AR. He explains that AR, hasn't been as dialed in as he needed to be. He hasn't been as focused and, hasn't been a pro's pro over the last 2 weeks. He's been starting in this area. And by the way, oh yeah, he's going to start again for the rest of the season. I'm like, wait, what?
I know
And
he
so
buried the lead a little bit on the
I
whole
know
thing.
exact. So now I know when big Colts news is happening. And obviously, I would like to scoop it, be in the know, and I honestly admit that even though I had pre-written, and this is the truth, a piece just in case they went back to Anthony, it
Yep.
was not like I walked in yesterday and just assumed, oh yeah, they're definitely going to do this. Like no, I was a bit taken aback just because of the messaging. 2 days ago you're saying Joe Flacco's your starter for the rest of the year. He's your guy going forward and shutting down
Yep.
everything Anthony Richardson question to wait a second, he's back. And so that was a lot to take in. And obviously a big reason why we had to re-record the podcast. But now I know, Jim, when big Colts news is going to happen, I walk into the room and there's a lot of cameras in the back, more than usual. And there's like 8 people who I know, and they're along the wall and they're really never in there for media. Because, for example, on Fridays, like these people are not in this media
Yeah.
room. On Wednesdays, they are
It's
not in
empty.
there. Like it's
Yeah.
pretty empty. There's nobody really standing guard on the franchise, but it was some who's in there. And I'm like, okay. So now I know, like, Colts, you might be able to tip your hand a little bit. So going forward, I'll be in the know But yeah, a bit surprising for sure. I know I think you messaged me in Slack and was like, "What the heck?" And I was like, "Yeah, like what the heck?" But again, we were prepared for it.
Yeah.
At some point, 'cause to me,
And
just
we
being
thought
quite,
after Sunday's game, it was like, okay,
yeah,
they might have to consider this now.
yeah. I mean, I tweeted it out. I was like, if Anthony can't get on the field again after Joe Flacco has 6 turnovers over the last 2 weeks, I believe 1 touchdown drive outside of garbage time in the last 2 weeks, and then also a 4 turnover performance, then Anthony's just not going to play again. That was
Right.
my mindset. And so obviously they had a change of heart in 24 hours. So it was a bit surprising, I will say, just because you rarely see franchises flip flop quarterbacks like this.
Yeah.
But, I was there. The messaging still isn't really all that clear about what Anthony like did or didn't do or what he's done better.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious to know, like, what was your reaction to it as someone who has kind of taken like I think a bird's eye view to like the league. When we talk all the time, it's like you're always telling me, well, hey, you're thinking about this story idea. Here's what this person did. So to kind of see, from a macro level, wow, like the optics of what's happening in Indy. What was your perspective?
Well, it's funny. I had a couple of people reach out immediately with, I think, and this is what happens, I think, in the NFL world, but the conspiracy theories start to come out, right? Like,
Yeah.
so the first one I heard was that it was like an Ursay mandated thing, and that's like, he doesn't have control over the quarterback, and it's like Ursay got mad and whatever. I don't know, but that was the first thing
Well,
I
I can
heard. The
tell you
second thing I heard,
definitively, like, no, Ursay did not
yeah,
make this decision. No, he did not.
I,
But go ahead.
yeah, and again, so that's again conspiracy theories. The second one, I will lend a little more credence to, which I thought was interesting, and again was the thought that crossed my mind was this always a 2 game suspension, stemming from the tap out being kind of the last straw of like, okay, they know they were going to set him down, like sit him down and be like, you're not fulfilling your end of the bargain by all the things that you already talked about. The tap out was the last straw. Clearly, you don't get it. You don't get what it means to be an NFL quarterback. You can't just live on the superhuman abilities, which James wrote about today. Fantastic story. Go read it if you guys haven't already. But they were going to sit him down for a predetermined amount of time. Or maybe it wasn't predetermined, but it was going to be at least multiple games in order to try to get this message through to him. And I'm not sure I'm ready to dismiss that yet. I don't know that they necessarily had a number of games in mind. But I do think when I saw your tweet when they said it had nothing to do with Joe Flacco's poor performance, and you said, and again I have to ask you, this is your podcast. Can I curse
Yes,
on
you
this
can.
podcast? And you said bullshit.
Yeah.
Like essentially, yeah.
Yeah.
You were like, no way is that true. So again, I'm going back and forth in my head about whether or not this was a predetermined amount of games or if they were just like, okay, he's learned his lesson, and again, I think it's more to what you're saying is Joe's not giving us the best chance to win anymore. And whether or not he's learned his lesson, we need to put him back in because we have these other guys in the locker room we need to think about and try to win some football games. And we'll talk about the schedule and what's coming up here in a little bit. But yeah, I guess my thought is this is weird because what can be learned in 2 weeks? Can you really change habits? Can you really change the way your mentality and the way you act and the way you are? Like, I'll say this: like, I know my first year in college, I struggled in school quite a bit. I didn't have good habits. I didn't go to classes, things like that. The first semester was a disaster for me. Second semester, I went back and I was like, I'm going to change. I'm going to do better. And I was good for a couple of weeks. And then all the bad habits came back again. And all the bad things that I did. I failed out of my first year of college. So like I'm concerned that that is a path that could happen with Anthony Richardson because it took me a while to learn my lesson and to learn good habits, and it took me more than 2 weeks. So my question to you now, we'll just keep asking each other questions. My question to you now is, do you believe that you can learn whatever it is he needed to learn? Maybe it's appreciation of the job or like working hard. He talked about the sacrifices he has to make and had, being a good, consistent person, a good father, all these things. Again, he said all the right things. Can you learn those things in 2 weeks and keep those good habits up? Is that possible? Do you believe it's possible?
I think it's possible. I think you can learn what you're supposed to do, but I don't think anyone is entitled to look at you entirely differently. I think that's what a lot of fans want to do. It's what perhaps the organization wants us to do in the media and just say, oh, nope, you know what? Nothing to see here. He's fine. No, that's not how humans are, quite frankly. We're complex beings, man. And it takes a long time for anybody to change. And maybe I'm cynical, but just from a life perspective, I feel like people do not change.
That's what I'm saying. It took me a long time. Yeah, it takes people a long time.
It takes a lot longer. But I will say, I think with Anthony's situation, obviously it's unique. It's not a regular job. It's not
Of course,
college. It's not
right?
whatever. And I think the magnitude of having your dream taken away from you is a little bit different than maybe
Sure.
not succeeding in whatever areas. Like, you know, going to class, which again, I didn't go to every class, but my whole thing was like, if you don't turn anything late, you're fine. Like you're gonna, pass.
Yeah, you pass.
Um,
Yeah.
but with Anthony, it's not like when we were in college that was our dream to be going to class or to be playing, or to be playing school. He's playing in the NFL. Like
Right.
I know he does nobody dreams of watching film or showing up early or getting your body treatment done, but you did dream of being in the NFL. And one of the questions I was asking different players today was about, you know, how deep does your love have to be? Or maybe how do you reassess it when you get to this level?
Yeah.
And DeForest Buckner, I thought, was great on this topic. He was saying, like, yeah, when I came in, you think you love the game,
Yeah.
but like he made it clear, he's like, everyone has a price to pay. And sometimes that price raises as you increase levels. And so the way DeForest made it clear, and Kenny Moore and others, they were like, no price, and I'm paraphrasing here, but no price is higher than the one you have to pay to be QB1 in the NFL.
100%. It's the highest
Like
price.
it's
Yes.
and is it fair? I would argue that it's probably not, considering how much we parse through their words, their manners, how they behave, even little things like, I go back to, if Anthony wasn't doing all this stuff before, why'd you make him a captain? Well, it's because you kind of have to in the NFL. Like if your
Right.
quarterback isn't a captain,
It's a
everyone
spotlight, man.
loses their mind.
Yep.
But if like you draft a cornerback or a defensive end or wide receiver or whoever, top five, and they're not a captain their first
Yeah.
year, no one. Matter of fact, no one even usually expects it.
If Leatu Latu isn't a captain in this year, next year, two, three, no one's gonna care. No one's gonna notice. No
No one
one will
cares.
notice.
Michael Pittman Jr., your best wide receiver for the last 5 years, didn't become a captain until this year, until his
Yep.
second contract in the NFL.
Yep.
And so, all that to say, I do think that he can change. I do think that he wants to change, or he
I
has to
think so too.
change.
Right.
But again, want to and results can be two different things. And my mom always tells me, like, your intent doesn't always mean or result in whatever outcome you want. So
Right.
you might intend for whatever to happen, but when we look up, whether it's a month from now or going into next season, if he's still QB1, whatever the case may be, it's what did you actually do? Not just what you said. Because
Yeah.
even then, like we talked about, a lot of this stuff was vague. The only real tangible thing we got from, Shane was maybe he could take notes better. It's like, okay, like take notes better. I'm in a lot of the things we heard from behind the scenes that were brought to light. And I do think it's a lot of maturity. And the word that I've heard is just naive. Naive
Right.
is the word that I've heard, whether it's a lot of the stuff, like people I've talked to. And again, not saying like I'm just doing some super secret sourcing. It's like, just asking around. The vibe is that it wasn't like Anthony is completely apathetic towards his job,
Of
or he's
course.
completely lazy, or he completely doesn't care. It's, oh, wait, you're not getting that you have to do more. He even said it himself. He's like, yeah, it's about sacrifice. He said, even if I don't want to do it, the other guys are doing it, I have to do it. I thought that was kind of a little bit revealing. It's like
Yeah.
there may have been times where he was like, you know what? I've done my work. Like, I don't really feel like doing any extra. But like with the quarterback, there's always extra.
There's always more.
There's
There's
always
always more to be
extra.
done. And
I
now
mean,
now we go
go
ahead.
ahead.
No, there's
Oh,
now we're gonna find out, like, because it's not gonna be easy, right? Like,
oh
again,
no.
it's 2 weeks. I can't stress that enough. Like, he could have been taking better notes or watching more film for 2 weeks. That's great. Now you got to do it for 2 months, and then it's got to be two
Yeah.
years, and then it's
Yeah.
got to be every day. It's got to be all of it. And you know what? Like you said, let's go back real quick, because I don't want to like overlook this. That's a very high standard, and maybe an unfair expectation. Most of us who have jobs, like you said, these aren't normal jobs and they're highly paid. Don't get me wrong, but most of
Mhm.
us who have jobs can step away, or it's good enough to do the thing. Like you can do your job and you can do it well, and you can do all the things on your checklist, which he talked about yesterday. Like I checked off all the things, I did all the things, and that can be enough. And a lot of us live that way.
Hmm.
What he has to learn is that to be a quarterback in the NFL, fair or not, that it takes more. And so now when he struggles, how is he going to react to that? Because it's going to happen. Like it may not happen against the Jets. Maybe he plays great, but it's going to happen against Detroit, or it's going to happen in another game. He's going to struggle. Is his reaction going to be to resort back to some of the bad habits, quote unquote, or not doing as much as he did before, or is it going to be burying his head in film study or notes, or
Yeah.
coming early to talk to the Jim Bob Cooter or Shane Steichen or whoever it may be? Like, what is his reaction going to be when it gets hard? Because
Yes.
it's gonna get hard again. It might get hard again this Sunday because, honestly, for the last 2 weeks, it's been easy because the spotlight has really kind of been off of him. It's been on Joe Flacco,
Yeah.
and he's been able to do the extra stuff, which is great. Again, I don't want to like dismiss it. It's good that he's learned. But how long has the lesson been learned in 2 weeks? And how long can you maintain those good habits? It's tough, man. I get you. He seems like a good person. I don't know him personally. He seems like a good person. He seems like he cares. The Colts have said in terms of that part of it, they seem like they don't think he's malicious. They don't think
Yeah. Like
they haven't
there's
lost
no like
faith in him as a person.
character flaws, like just
Yeah.
terrible like none of that stuff. No.
But some people don't have that extra gear, and almost always, not necessarily true all the way through, but almost always to be a successful NFL quarterback, you have to have that extra gear. And you wrote about it today. Even if you are physically like a freak of nature, superhumanly gifted, which he is, you have to have the extra gear to access to be what you need to be as a leader and as a player. And
Yeah.
I'm not saying he doesn't have it, but we need to. It's time to see it now. The Colts need to see it now.
And that's what makes this situation with Anthony Richardson so unique. I mean, we've
Mm-hmm.
seen quarterbacks get drafted high, start, get benched, come back. One of the ones you always hear is John Elway, right? This is the guy who had to take some time, and I think it might have been Terry Bradshaw, and even we see like Bryce Young, started, got
Yeah,
benched, this, and then came back and is kind of doing okay. But
yeah,
with Anthony, when I look at him, it's like you have every physical gift imaginable. I mean, maybe
yep.
he didn't get it all because he wears contacts during the games and glasses during interviews. So I guess we can't have it all, right? But physically, like
No,
when he
no
when he
heat
slipped,
vision for him.
no,
Yeah,
seriously, I mean, when he slipped on that red shirt, he
yeah,
walked in with the blue practice, slipped on the red shirt. I was like, man, that dude could be Superman on Halloween and wouldn't have to put in like little fake chest plate. Like he's literally built physically to do all the things.
yep,
But the one thing that, and I hope that he understands this, and I think that he will, not that I have to, mentor the guy. I'm not nobody's mentor. I just critique what I
yeah,
see, my opinion. But in all seriousness, it's like you don't want to be the guy who looks up and they say what could have been.
yeah,
Now, they might still say that, but don't let it be because, oh, what could have been because if he didn't work hard enough or he wasn't dialed in enough. Like if you
yeah,
give everything, and I've talked to different players about this, and on a tangent, I talked to Laquan Treadwell about this, 9-year veteran, a Colts wide receiver. He's for a former first round pick. He's been through every
yep,
ups and downs. I talked to him one day just randomly, and I was like, man, like, why'd you just keep going with this? I'm like, you got money, like you got success, like you don't have to chase a practice squad, roster thing. And he's like, because the pain of not chasing it or not trying to like just squeeze every ounce out of this would suck more than like just failing. Like, I got to go for it. And I talked to Ronnie Harrison about this. I said, hey, man, I was like, you went from being a starter to, out of the league to back to special teams now. And he's like, and he gave a very candid, quote to me one day. And he's like, and I talked about AR. I was like, I said, I know you're not the quarterback. I know you're not Anthony Richardson, but like, if you give any advice to this kid, like, what would you say? And he's like, it's only over when you stop working. Thought that was real. And I'm like, he said,
yeah,
oh, that's it. It's only
yeah,
over when you stop chasing it and you stop giving everything towards it. And so I think that Anthony has learned or will learn that even if you're blessed with all the things that we can't teach, you got to do the other things. And I get it. It's always funny you hear these cliches. It's like to do something extraordinary, you got to do, something extraordinary with your preparation, or you got to give extra and all. And he does. But you also got to just do simple things.
Yeah.
Whether it's note taking, showing up on time, staying late, like these are simple things that you can do. Now they might be big life changes for you. They might change. They might even scare you a little bit. I've talked to coaches about this, where you're almost afraid to fully commit because it's like, what if I do all this and it doesn't work? Well, you can't be sitting around trying to figure out, well, what if I don't? Like, no,
Yeah.
do it. And I think that's why a lot of the guys, even when he was out, I was asking, different people about his character, and Josh Downs was saying he could have like turtled and really
Yeah.
just went into himself and just said like, all right, well, whatever. I guess I'll just go through the motions. Josh was saying, no, Anthony was still like dialed in, probably perhaps more. And that's what, Quentin Nelson, who I tell you all never lies. He told me, he's like, AR boosted everything. And I think that is why, even though this demotion can be seen as kind of embarrassing considering the circumstances, you weren't hurt. It
Right.
wasn't like you committed a crime and they had to put you, on the commissioner's exempt list or something like that. Like they basically sat you down because you weren't understanding the magnitude of your position. But
Yeah.
now the guys are like, we think he understands, and we also see that he cares. And now it's holding him accountable. And then himself, you got to own this. I get it, man. Like it's easy to blame Shane Steichen or blame Chris Ballard or blame Jim Irsay. Like you guys didn't give them the infrastructure to succeed. And all those guys do deserve some blame for how this all went down, which we'll get into. However, as a 22-year-old man,
Yeah.
father, all those things, man, you got to own the
Yep.
stuff that you know you didn't do well. I asked him, like, what are some areas you want to grow in? And he still hasn't really said, but he knows. We all know. Whenever I told you this, on our podcast, it doesn't exist.
Oh, it exists. It's out there. That's the
Yeah,
lost tape. Yeah.
that when it comes review time on a job, you
Yep.
always know what you did well and what you didn't do well. It's
Yeah,
never a
man.
surprise. It's never a surprise. And so I do think that that is a big part of it. What I wanted to ask you, though, to kind of transition a little bit away from AR in particular, what did you think of just the messaging from the team, which has been my like pet peeve the last
Yeah. That's a nice way of putting it.
yeah, but the messaging around this,
Yeah.
and perhaps I think being late to the party when it comes to just explaining even a little bit of what's actually going on with Anthony Richardson.
It's confusing, but I guess okay, if I'm trying to see it through the Colts lens,
Mhm.
and we did talk about this on the Lost podcast of yesteryear that no one will ever hear. I was trying to pitch it as like kind of a hypothetical of like, okay, if you were the Colts and you were trying to get this person out of him that we've been talking about, he needs to be, um, but he wasn't. That guy wasn't showing up. What would you do, and how would you handle it? And would you operate through the media the way that you'd want, like the way you, James, would want, or other reporters or
Fair.
fans would want? And I think they could have handled it better, but I definitely think they were very cognizant of protecting him, of being, we don't want to get, like, if the message gets out there that he is not working as hard as he could be, does that turn into him as lazy? And does that turn into like he doesn't care, like you said, apathetic? Like, can you control that message enough if you say it to get out there that it's okay, what has happened, and he needs to learn from it, and we're giving him grace because he's young and naive and he doesn't know what he doesn't know. We're going to teach him these things. That's hard to get out there in the way that you want it to get out there without having people turn on him. And instead, they decided they were going to bench him without saying much about why. And even Anthony Richardson, when you asked him and said, like, did they tell you why they benched him? He said, not really, which, again, I think he knew, but they didn't say anything. Like, I think they were just saying, we'll handle it internally. We're not gonna air this out in public. You kind of talked about this with Jim Bob Cooter recently about him saying, like, we're gonna coach the player, we're not gonna coach him through the media. Um, and I think that they were hoping that was gonna be enough and that was okay. And they were willing to take the bullets. They were willing to take the bullets from fans and from national media who were rightfully killing them for this decision, because it was like, what are you doing? You said he needs to play, and now you're benching him, and now and you're not telling us why, and now he's going to sit on the bench behind Joe Flacco. What are you trying to accomplish with Joe Flacco? And you're not going to make the play. If you make the playoffs, you're not going to make any noise. Like, we all knew that, and they didn't. They decided not to say anything. I get the mentality. I do. I think this all tracks in a way, but it does, it leaving your fans in the wilderness on it. and expecting them to come out on the other end believing that you know what you're doing. And this doesn't look like the gif that I tweeted out from The Office where it's snip, snap. You're going back and forth. Like, yeah, man, you might have lost a lot of people with the way you handled this, even if ultimately it was the right way to handle it. I don't know. I mean, I know that was a long way of answering that question, but that's kind of the way. Like, I think they did what they thought was the best to do it, but the messaging wasn't packaged well. No one understood it, at least not externally, and they probably lost a lot of not fans, but they lost whatever faith fans had in them to do the right thing and to bring this guy along as the right quarterback. I don't know if you burned the bridge, but you started to, you set it on fire,
Yeah, so I look at this in a few parts. I understand fully, like you can't disclose everything about your team, about how you go about doing things with certain players, any disciplinary actions, things like that. My biggest thing was with Shane in particular, you have to say something so that I know you want to protect him, but when you're too tight-lipped, then any narrative can run wild. Any rumor can catch legs. Anything
Right.
can kind of start being bubbled up about the guy that you say is your franchise quarterback. Like, for example, when I ask, do you think he's going to start here again? I can't see the future. Okay, well, is that the plan? I don't know. What are we supposed to think about that?
Yeah, you need better answers than that. There's no doubt. You need to say it. You could say it depends. It depends on how Anthony handles this, or something like that.
Yeah. And then, 14
It's
days later, you're
vague,
like,
but
you know
it's an
what?
answer.
Hey,
Yeah.
yeah, you know what? 14 days later, oh, he's our franchise quarterback. We believe in him. He's got all the skills. And we're like, wait, what? You couldn't commit to him playing again here ever, 2 weeks ago. And then on
Was that
top
part
of
of?
that,
Wait, let me stop you though. Wasn't that part of the mess? They didn't want Anthony to hear 2 weeks ago that no matter what, he's the guy. Because then is he learning the lesson or not?
which is
Maybe that.
fair, which is fair. Maybe that's I'm being a little too hard, but I will say what I don't think I'm being too hard on is this whole the process thing.
Yeah.
Like,
No. Yeah.
I'm asking you what the process is, and you just tell me it's a process. What? Like, and I don't know if I'm jaded now or what, but like I'm 6 years into being a writer out of college, and you do this long enough, and you remember all of the coaches, also all of the coaching cliches, all of the platitudes, all of the just empty words that people say that sound cool but don't mean anything. And I mean, all of us do it. I mean, I ask questions sometimes that are like, this could have been phrased better or just not asked
Yeah.
at all. This was a cliche question. So it goes both ways. But I feel like my cliche detector goes off the radar, or just goes crazy when I hear things like Shane say, well, it's just the process. It's about, you know, working hard and, being ready. And it's like, what does that mean? What does that actually mean? And so I asked him, what does this process mean? And Monday he said, it's just a process. Like, you can't say that. You can't
I
just
agree.
say that. I mean, I get it. And I guess, again, hindsight is 2020. I don't envy being in Shane's position at all. I don't ever want to be in his position, actually. Well, maybe for the money. We'll see. Coach James,
Yeah.
Coach
Yeah.
Boyd.
You could wear it for a couple of years and then just be like, all right, fire
Oof,
me. I don't care.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'd be awful. I'd be so bad. Um, but I think you could say something along the lines of, we have a high standard for our players. There is
Mhm.
already a high standard for the quarterback position in the NFL, and we need Anthony to understand that.
Yeah.
I think that's better than like just saying like essentially nothing. And so again, I don't think that you completely like ruin any credibility, but it is hard to look at
Yeah.
any messaging going forward and to trust your plan or trust that things will go in a manner in which they make sense, because for a while it just didn't make sense. You're saying that Joe Flacco is the best option at quarterback, and we're like, well, this guy's not playing well right now. What do you mean? Like, if you're saying, but if the messaging from the beginning is Anthony has to learn how to be a pro, then we kind of get it. I'm like, okay, well, yeah, we understand he's in the doghouse, got to figure it out, whatever. Now, again, is that the best course of action? Could you do a well actually for every scenario we throw out there? Probably. But I do think, just I stand by my position that,
Yeah.
there's a lot of smart people with the Colts that know what the plan is. Just give us a little bit of what it actually means. And then to put a button on this part of it, I think fans deserve some sort of direction. And I don't say
Yeah.
this in the sense of like the ones who are like those in my family who want to fire every coach from every team, whoever makes any decision they don't agree with, or they have a bad game. It's like if my family was running any Chicago teams, being from that area, every coach and player that like ever had anything go good or bad would never be on that team for more than like 2 weeks. Like
Oh,
they're
same.
we're
Same
all
family.
emotional. I get right, we get it. But I do think about the fans who are like, you know what? Why should I spend $100 to take me and my son to a game, or $200 to take me and my family to a game, and I don't even know what I'm actually supporting? Like you all won't even tell me what the plan is, or what I'm investing in. It's at the end of the day, it's a product, so you have to kind of treat it as such. And I do think that's an area in which Shane can grow, and I think he kind of grew up a little bit this past Wednesday, where he came out and explained. Now, part of that I think was just the announcement of Anthony being back in the lineup, but I do think it was a better understanding of what's going on, because again, if you're expecting this kid to be a professional, then you have to, you know, kind of meet him there in certain aspects, kind of help him,
Yes.
in that space.
Yeah, we haven't talked about that enough. Is did the Colts do enough to explain to him what the standard was to help him reach that standard? We could relitigate whether or not they should have played him, from the start, from
The
jump.
question is, Jim, like, okay, well, these issues obviously weren't new, so why were you
Right.
playing them to begin with? And that's the question no one's answering just yet. And we'll get to the bottom of it. Trust me, I'm persistent. But I'm like, there's a few questions that we kind of left, on the chopping board or whatever, on the
Yeah.
cutting block or whatever, because chopping block, I'm sorry. But it's because that to me gets to like the crux of
Yeah.
whatever is going on between Anthony, the franchise, and how they're going to ultimately help him be the guy they drafted him to be, who they told us 18 months ago could be, not saying that they would do it overnight, but could be a guy that could help elevate this franchise. And I think that's a big, big part of whatever is going on here. So obviously it's a unique situation, but one where I do think that all involved have to be a bit better. And I'm just looking forward to, obviously, a lot of season left, which we'll get into, but I do look forward to sitting down with Chris Ballard and talking to him, on the record, and talking to Jim Irsay eventually, whether it's at the owners meetings or somewhere else, on the record about everything that kind of went down these 2 weeks, just to kind of understand, because again, optically, it's hard to trust that the Colts are being a serious franchise when it
Right.
looks like this.
Well, that's the thing is like you if this was a franchise that had gone from a stable situation at quarterback to Anthony Richardson and this was happening, you'd have a little more built-in trust to be like, okay, well, they've figured it out before, and they'll figure it out again. Like this is we can understand that. But this is an organization that has been through quarterback hell the last five years, really. I mean, Andrew Luck, Carson Wentz, Matt Ryan, all the things that we saw them go through. And not really have a plan, or at least the plan was terrible, right? Like it was either not have a plan, or the plan was horribly executed.
Mm-hmm.
And so now they say trust the process effectively, and it's like, well, listen, man, the process hasn't been great here in the past. So could you tell us a little bit more about what the process is, so that we know what we're buying into and what we need to be patient? Like again, like you told us, this is fans saying this, you told us to be patient. It was going to take time, and then you yanked him off the field. So it's like, wait a second, you're not showing patience. And then you're like, well, no, have patience. We have a process. It's like, well, wait a second. Like, what is the plan here? So
Right.
again, you're yanking I mean, not just Richardson that's getting yanked back and forth. It's the whole fan base getting yanked back and forth without a lot of clarity being offered from the top. So I get where you're coming from, and they could have handled the situation better. I understand trying to protect him, but they should have handled the situation better and understanding, hey, maybe Shane doesn't have the understanding of what the city's been through because he hasn't been here that long. But Chris Ballard certainly does, and a lot of people in that organization certainly do. So, yeah, man, I definitely think they could have handled it better. And yeah, I wanted to, before we get past this part of the conversation, I do want to say we talked a lot about Anthony Richardson needed doing some growing up and understanding you know, what is required of him. But the Colts you said it, the Colts have to meet him halfway. The Colts have to do some growing up and figure out what they can do to do better by Anthony Richardson and help him develop and all this stuff. Obviously, ultimately, it's going to come down to him because he's the
Yeah.
guy,
I
and
mean, I
it has
put
to
the
be
majority on
internal.
the
But
player. Yeah.
yeah, it's internal, but they got to also understand where they can be better, and that's yeah. So again, it's going to take both sides of this because both sides to this point have kind of failed each other to this point. They
Yeah.
can still fix it. There's still plenty of time. He's still super young. We talked about this before. Like the dude is what 3 days older than
22.
Cam Ward, the
Yeah,
guy
which is
who's going to be the top quarterback, or at least is the number one on Dane Brugler's draft board. Like he's still so young. He's still plenty of talent. Like there is still plenty of time to salvage this, but both sides need to be better. So, yeah, let's get into the last thing we want to talk about, which is essentially the game against the Jets, which I thought was going to be the matchup of the two oldest quarterbacks in the NFL ever, like 80 years combined between the two of them, and now we get Anthony Richardson back, which is again going to make the game more compelling. I'm not going to get into like the breakdown. What I'm more interested in is looking at the schedule going forward and thinking like I think a lot of people have kind of written the Colts off this year, and for good reason. They haven't looked great.
I'll say
Uh,
yeah. Uh-huh.
but you look at this schedule and you see the Jets, and obviously the Lions will be really tough in 2 weeks. But the Jets, I think I told this on again. We'll keep referencing the podcast that nobody ever heard. I edited a story recently, and it went up today on the athletic website about the teams most likely to get the number one overall pick. They like mathematically by our projection model from Austin Mock. They play. The Jets were on that list. The Jaguars were on that list. The Titans were on that list. The Giants were on that list. The Patriots were on that list. Those are five of the teams in the top 10 that are most likely to pick at the number one spot in the draft. The Colts play those five teams and the Lions and Broncos. And the Broncos are a gettable game. So, like, this season isn't over yet. It might be soon because if they keep playing the way they have been, it might be done. But they can win a lot of those games and get back into this thing. Because also the other thing is two things I'll say. Houston isn't playing very well right now. And the other thing is the last AFC wildcard spot is a shit show. They're just filled with bad teams competing for that last spot. Denver's hanging on to it right now, but Cincinnati's floating around in there. I mean, it's not looking good. It might only take 9 wins to get into that spot. So I don't know what the question is, James, but I guess the question is, do you think they can float around and make this thing interesting toward the end of the year?
I definitely think they can. And that was the other part of this equation. It's like, for some people, it's like,
Yep.
hip hip hooray, Anthony Richardson's back. And I'm like, okay, now you got to go play. And I thought it was interesting that Shane was asked, you know, about Anthony's accuracy, I believe, and like his play, and can that improve in 2 weeks? And he's like, yeah, I've seen improvements there too. And it's like,
2 weeks, man.
I'm like, I don't think he's gonna come out and be Drew Brees on Sunday at MetLife Stadium with his accuracy.
You wait. 70%, baby. It's coming.
Look, I'll eat crow if he does. I mean, look, and I tell you all the time, look, the team I'm covering winning has never hurt my job ever. Like, I mean, obviously I do the job regardless, but
yeah,
it's funny when fans are like, you just want them to lose. It's like, not like, I don't really care if they win or lose, but trust me, it is an easier job. Seriously, if you walk into a locker room and everyone in there is like not mad. So
yeah, and people, by the way, it's better for us if the teams, just in terms of like metrics and people reading and clicking on stories, which is important to us, as you guys know, and we don't have to get into all that, but it's better when they're winning. It's better when the teams are winning.
Exactly. But it's the combination of Anthony's return, but also there's some season left. And I asked Quentin Nelson, he's great, man. Great player, but also just it's just a funny media interaction I have with him, relationship I have with him, because I can be as blunt as I want to be with my questions. Quentin doesn't take any offense because I think he's just like too real for like fluffy stuff or like easing your way into a tough question. He's just like, ask the question, I'll give you an answer. So I was like, hey, AR is back, but you got a lot of season left, man. Like, what's the urgency level to get this rolling? Like, and he's like, maximum, mic drop, and walked off. And it was the last question I had for him. I was like, okay, respect. Like, maximum, that's what you get. I thought it was interesting, even with Zaire saying, with 5, meaning number 5, Anthony Richardson with 5, we got a chance. Yep. We got to do our part. He said we got to, continue to uphold what we done as a defense and even be a little bit better. And so, as much as you hear these guys talking about Anthony Richardson, who's dominated the conversation this week for the right reasons, obviously huge news, but the underbelly of all this is like, man, yeah, the quarterback changed, and a lot of them are happy to rally behind Anthony Richardson. Not to say not that they didn't rally around Joe Flacco as well. They did, but it's this sense of we got to go out and like make this worth it now. You know what I mean? Like, it's not just enough to have Anthony be sort of redeemed. It's to redeem ourselves and to go play well and to go stack some wins. And so I'm excited to see that. And they do have some golden opportunities. I mean, the schedule makers were kind of towards the back end of the season. I'm like, look,
Heck
these
yeah, they
teams
were.
are not
Yep.
good. And I do believe, I believe in it more and more almost every Sunday. It's like any given Sunday, because every time you think a game is going to go how you think it's going to go, in this league, it rarely goes that way. I just feel like games are, even if the team that you pick to win wins, the games are this year especially have been like one score games, one possession games. The Colts themselves have been in almost every game outside of the Buffalo game, losing by 10. They've been in
Right.
a bunch of one score games as well. So there's hope out there. There's excitement out there. And I do think, if we look up and the Colts have made the playoffs, Anthony Richardson is starting QB. That's probably the best case scenario for this entire debacle conundrum that we've kind of been through. And I do think that that would also kind of ease some of the pressure of the QB decision for next season. Because the reality is, if he comes out and he plays the rest of the season and he's like terrible, the question
Yeah.
has to be asked, do you stay
Yeah.
on? Do you continue? Because the fact that they benched him before doesn't mean that they're like immune to it now. So you cracked the door open already. Now I think it's up to Anthony to kind of, like he said, it's up to me to keep my job.
Yep.
It's up to me to understand what I have to do to go play well. But it's also, I think he has to show some flashes, and this team has to kind of, at least win some games and not get embarrassed and, lose, let this 3-game losing streak snowball into like 5 or 6 or something where it's just like you're free falling and nothing's working. You got some life there. You're fortunate to be 4-6 and still in the thick of this thing. And I think all the
Yep.
guys know that too. Like Kenny was saying, we got to go out there and play. We got to go out there and kind of prove this and go earn it. And that is exciting because you never know. Like, you can look up and say, hey, we made the playoffs with our young quarterback who's figuring it out. That would be something I think that this team would desperately welcome, considering how things have gone the last few seasons here with the quarterback changes, missing the playoffs, all those things like that. And I do think in the back of my mind, Jim, about just roster construction a little bit. Like Buck isn't
Yeah.
getting any younger.
Nope.
Quentin Nelson's still in his prime, but it's not like he's like an exactly super young player anymore. Obviously we saw Ryan Kelly get banged up, who he expects to be back to this season. But other guys who've sacrificed so much for this team, it's like, all right, we've given everything. Now, AR, you got to do your part and try to help us,
Yep.
make something of this season. Because as much as we want to talk about, well, this season it can only go so far. These guys still want to go out there and compete and like just see what we got, and perhaps get into the dance and see what happens. So, I'm excited about that, and I will say, it is funny to realize like, yeah, we're not going to do the whole two old quarterbacks thing. This Sunday at MetLife. It will be a very young one. And I'm curious to see how AR responds, like you said, to the
Yeah.
adversity, because it's gonna be up and down. He's gonna make mistakes, and things like that. But I think between now and the end of the season, we'll see his character, his real work ethic, all those things. And personally, I'm not believing anything he says about, when it comes to I'm a changed person until I actually see some things tangibly. I know people have been in my comments on Twitter about this. You love that word tangible. And I'm like, yes, I do. Because I'm like, everybody
Yeah.
speaks in abstracts with this team and this quarterback. I need some concrete stuff because that's what you're judged on at the end of the day. Like we could
I
talk about all these things, Jim, but you're judged about what you put on freaking tape.
I mean, the questions for Shane Steichen going forward are gonna be: is he getting here early? Is he staying here late? Is he watching more film than he had in the past? Is he asking more questions in his meetings? Is he preparing harder and more than he did in the past? For the rest of the season, those are the questions that you and other Colts reporters are going to be asking because
Yes.
you need to know tangibly, are these things happening? Are the things you need to see happen? And you won't just be asking Shane Steichen. You'll be asking the other players. You'll be asking Joe Flacco. You'll be asking, is he asking you questions? Have you seen him more in meetings? Is he being more present in these meetings? That's all it's going to be asked about
Yeah.
because win or lose, whatever. I mean, again, you want to win, but like win or lose, his future as the Colts quarterback is on the line these last 7 games. Like he has to play well enough to keep his job because 2 years is that's a lot of time for an NFL right now. Like
Yeah.
there are plenty of NFL quarterbacks who get 2 years to try this thing and then they're done. Some get less, but 2 years, 3 years, that's pretty much it. So these 7 games are going to be hugely important. And again, You're right. I don't think you can say it enough. He is blessed by the schedule. I mean, I'm looking at it like they play the Lions, who are 8-1, and their strength of schedule is still like the team's win percentage is 368, and they play an 8-1 team. That's how bad all the other teams are. If
Yeah.
they want to make the playoffs, they get to play Denver. Denver is the team leading that last wild card spot. They get a game against Denver. They can win that tiebreaker by beating. Again, it's just everything they want is still there. It's
Yeah.
crazy to think about it. Like I'm looking at Austin's model, they have a 20% chance of making the playoffs. That's pretty good this time of year. It's actually, I mean, it's
Yeah.
not great, obviously, but like at 4-6, not bad. So, like you said, we're going to see a lot in the next 7 weeks. We're going to learn a lot in the next 7 weeks, and we'll see if Anthony's learned a lot in the next 7 weeks.
There we go. So that's all we have for the first episode, which is really the second episode, which is really the real first episode. But in all seriousness, thank you all for tuning in and joining us and rejoining us. You can check out the James Boyd Podcast wherever you get your podcast. Just search the name the James Boyd Podcast. You'll see an animated picture of myself looking more handsome than the one in real life. I told my homie, I was like, my buddy,
You look good, man.
Mikey made the picture from high school, and I was like, Mikey, you made my hairline crispier than the one I have in real life. So it was cool to collaborate with him, cool to bring the podcast back, and obviously there's plenty to discuss going forward, and we will be with you all very soon. I have to thank Jim Ayello as well for still rocking with me. Glad to have you here, my friend, and we'll
Love it.
see what is next for the Indianapolis Colts.